You have seen the errors that are possible when using a chain for measurements. In order to avoid some of these errors and other mistakes which surveyors might encounter on the field, it is advisable to be aware of some do's and don'ts in chaining. So, what are these do's and don'ts in chaining which surveyors need to be aware of? Let us find out the answer by going through this module, Do's and Don'ts in Chaining. Welcome. After completing this module, you will be able to list the do's and don'ts in chaining. Do's and don'ts in chaining. The do's and don'ts in chaining are basically a list of precautions to be taken in chaining. Let us find out what they are. To begin with, always hold the zero end of the chain properly. Otherwise, you might get incorrect measurements. Do not put the chain end in an arrow or ranging rod while taking measurements. Otherwise, your measurements will not be accurate. Next, call out the measurements clearly and loudly and let the surveyor repeat them. Otherwise, the surveyor might make errors in his notes. Also, mark the point where the arrow is fixed with a cross. Else, you might place the next chain length in an incorrect position. Then, remember that when you are noting the measurement from the chain, check the teeth of the tally with respect to the correct end. Otherwise, you might misread the markings on the chain. During stepping, do not take measurements if the chain is not properly horizontal. Otherwise, the measurements might fall short of or exceed actual lengths. Always open the chain in a proper manner. Otherwise, the chain might get entangled. See that all the links of the chain are properly opened and that no link should be stuck. Do not take measurements if the chain is not properly extended. Otherwise, you will end up taking measurements that are incorrect. After taking measurements, fold the chain in a proper manner for taking measurements. Otherwise, the chain might get entangled. Always keep these points in mind when using the chain at the site. In this module, you have learnt the do's and don'ts that need to be followed. You should follow all the good practices of chaining, such as holding the zero end of the chain properly, calling out and repeating measurements, checking the teeth of the tally, opening and closing the chain properly. You should always avoid the incorrect ways of using the chain, such as taking measurements when the chain is not properly extended or when the chain is not horizontal during stepping.